Hello, in this video we'll be talking about safety insight. Now when we talk about safety insight, it is a very important and mandatory understanding for every civil engineer. So in this video we'll be looking at how site engineers can take positions and steps to make sure that the safety is ensured. Now do you have to learn everything about safety? Not really. But at least the basics of safety is something that the site engineer needs to learn. So let's look at what exactly is safety in a construction site. So the construction site safety is basically an aspect of construction where the activities concerned are to do with protecting the workers, protecting the engineers, and all the other stakeholders who are at the project site, not just from death, but also from injury, any diseases, or any health related risks. Even something like COVID is something that we should be looking at preventing in the construction site, and that also comes under health and safety. Previously, there was only a concept of safety at site. So previously, as in 20, 15 years back in Indian construction market, only safety was something that was pivotal in the construction site. But in the last few years, in the last decade or so, there have been multiple additions to safety because construction professionals have realized that it is not just safety that we need to take care of, we need to take care of other things as well. So in terms of basic safety procedures in construction, what site engineers should know is first, we need to understand that all the laborers and engineers need to be trained whenever there is a heavy equipment. So whenever there is a backhoe loader, earth mover, crane, mixers, tractors, truck, very important for all the laborers and engineers to know what is the training required to not drive these equipments, but know how this equipment works. Based on that, the job site layout will be planned, the transit roads will be planned, and based on that, everything else that comes with labor management and site management shall be planned. So that is something that site engineers need to understand in the initial stages of the project itself, where we look at how to provide training. Second is understanding and assessing each site to identify and minimize dangers. As site engineers, you know that if there is a block right at the edge of a slab, you know that it is a danger. If there is an extended rebar from the column, you know it is a danger. But site engineers don't take steps there. That is something that site engineers should do. Wherever you find that there is a potential risk or potential danger, make sure you assess those sites to minimize those dangers. Third is in terms of PPE. Of course, when you enter the site as a site engineer in a very small scale or a tier 3 kind of a or a local contractor, PPE is not very important or PPE is not used very highly in those kind of situations. But whenever there is concreting, whenever there is something to do with reinforcement, whenever there is metal fallen on the ground surface, the basic will be to provide a shoe. It is a slightly bigger investment, but this will remove all the risks, whichever that might occur during the process or during the project duration. Hence, it is very important to provide the protective equipment. So when we talk about harnesses, we talk about nets, we talk about barricades, all these things, every day it's not a risk. But if it goes wrong once in those 100 days of project or once in even 500 days of project, it is going to add a lot of lawsuit and legal problems to the companies. Fourth one is to make sure that you implement these safe site visits. That means whenever there is a visitor, normally what happens if there is a visitor, visitors might not understand the complexity and dangers at the site. Let's say a client who is not a civil engineer, who is just some random person who is just put up the money. If he's coming to visit the site, if their families are coming to visit the site, they don't know the dangers at site. That is why it's important to implement those practices even for those visitors as well. So the job of site engineer will be to understand that even visitors need to be safe, because once they come into the project site, the property or the responsibility of those people also comes under the contractor itself or the client. Next is making sure investigating on how to reduce fatigue. Tiredness is a huge problem in laborers, especially because they work in terms of physical labor and not much of mental labor. There is a huge chance of fatigue in the project sites. That is why, where are the water cans? Where are the provisions for water? Where are the provisions for shelter? All these things need to be provided to make sure that the laborers are not fatigued, because the labor might not tell you directly, but their productivity will come down. And once their productivity comes down, the site engineer should understand that this might be due to fatigue or attitude. But if a labor who has worked really good for 100 days has a problem on 101st day, it is not attitude problem, it is a fatigue problem. Hence, it is very important for us to look at it as well. Site engineers also need to understand that you cannot push labor for 15, 16-hour shifts. They will accept, because there is overtime, and because of overtime, there is high pay as well. They will accept. But if you do that, then the next day they'll come with a fatigue. And that is where it is going to be a huge problem in terms of the long-term productivity of these labors. Next is to install signs and remind people of risks. So attaching safety signs in the construction site is mandatory. Right from the entrance to each stages, what are the things that you should be wearing? What are the things you should not be wearing? How do you process it? How do you not process it? What is the route to go to a location? All those things need to be installed in terms of signs, because you cannot have security person telling each and every one about all these signs. It has to be a sign attached in the project itself. Next is understanding the reporting of faults. So if there are equipment, if there is a calibration issue, if there is an engine oil issue, if there is any kind of issue with the equipment, it is very important for site engineers to understand and report it as soon as possible, because end of the day, it's a machine. Machine might deteriorate in terms of quality or in terms of any mechanical issues. But as site engineers, we cannot wait till the machine breaks down. Imagine you have a vehicle. If something goes wrong, you know that the mileage is less, there is more smoke. You do take it to a service. You don't wait for the entire vehicle to break down. Correct? Similarly, we have to do it for equipments in site as well. Next is in terms of investing in construction variables. Like I told, this is a small investment that needs to be done to ensure that in future the risk will not be there in the project. We have seen multiple projects like this where the safety has not been taken as priority. There is an issue. Some laborers have been harmed, or in terms of injured or even dead, and then the labor unions come and attack the contractor and the client, where they have to pay in crores to these unions to settle the case, or they go to court and then they settle, or they take the penalty. So instead of risking all those, it's better to have the safety beforehand, where you invest hardly 1-2 lakh in the basic safety at least. Then it is important for us to remain mindful of weather related hazards. If there is a hurricane, if there is a cyclone, if there is huge rain, snowfall, if there is 45 degrees heat, if there is a heat wave, how do you manage? That is important. If there is a heat wave, it is important for us to stay hydrated. Hence, water cans have to be provided in multiple places at site. If it is too cold, then there needs to be some kind of fire or some kind of warmth in the site to provide it. Then if there is huge rain, then there needs to be some kind of temporary shelter, so that they can keep on working while the rainfall is continuing as well. Or in terms of exit from the site, all these things are something that site engineers need to understand. This is something no engineering college will tell you, correct? Or even sometimes companies won't tell you what happens when it rains. You're doing some work, it starts raining. If you're doing concreting, it starts raining. If you've just excavated, it starts raining. This is very common problem in India. So that is something that site engineers need to know. Okay, this might rain today. You look at the cloud, you look at Google, everyone has Google weather right now. So you look at Google, it will show that it is going to rain at 3 o'clock. Of course, it is not as accurate as predicted, but you know that it might rain. In that case, you should be able to plan for a alternative. In case it rains, what to do? Very similar problem throughout the Indian subcontinent. Next is understanding a culture. We have to, as site engineers, establish a culture where we don't need to tell everyone about safety. A new labor who comes on some random day to the site, once they see that every labor is wearing a site PPE, every engineering is wearing it, they themselves will go and ask for the PPE kit. This is something that I have seen firsthand in my projects, where I never expected this in my first job, because my first job as a site engineer, I never did this. It was only a township and a layout planning project that I did. So safety were very less. Safety PPEs were very less. So in my first project, after I went into my company called Godrej, that's when I understood the importance of safety, and that's when I understood even a new labor who doesn't know anything about safety will come and ask for a helmet and the vest and gloves and shoes because he has seen all the other labor wearing it. So that itself is a huge step in terms of establishing a culture. Now, this is how you look at site procedures. These are some of the safety sign boards. On the left, you can see clearly the step-by-step process for the public or the visitors. So this is something that we'll be looking at in the gate. The next one will be in terms of entering the site. The below the two images that we have, safety helmets must be worn, high visibility clothing must be worn. This is if the project is huge, if the campus is huge, or the plot is huge. Next, we look at the lights on the right side. The lights on the right side is for the transit of materials. So if there is any truck that is near the store, then the red light will be switched on. And once the truck leaves, the security will switch on the green light. And on the right bottom side, you have the transit route as well, which road to take, which road not to take inside the site. And this is something that comes in picture when we talk about job site layout. All right, so this is about site safety. In the next video, we'll be talking about site safety measures and procedures. So see you in the next video.